Okay, welcome, Adam and Jordan. Welcome to The Soloist. Mallory and I are so excited to talk to you today. Mallory and I were thinking of this episode that we wanted to do on friendship, how to be a good friend, what new ways of imagining friendship and what friends can be in our lives. And so I literally was like, who do I know who's a really good friend? And Mallory, I think you were doing the same. And I thought of Adam. Adam and I are actually very new friends. How long have we known each other? A couple months?
Probably like a month and change. Yeah.
A month and change. Is that it? Yeah. But I've been hearing about Adam for a while because we have many good mutual friends, and he is known as a very good and enthusiastic friend for reasons we'll get into soon. And then Mallory, how do you and Jordan know each other?
Jordan and I met when we were little freshman babies at BYU, actually.
Oh.
We were in the film program together and actually didn't get to hang too much in college. We got to know each other afterward when we were both living in Salt Lake, and then even better when I moved to LA and he'd lived here for several years and helped show me the ropes and keep me from just falling into the abyss. It's very hard to move to a new city and very, very hard to move to LA in particular.
In COVID, no less.
It's true, I did. It's the worst timing ever. No, but because Diana was like, what about doing an episode about friendship? And do you think of anybody who's a really, really good friend? And I feel so lucky. I had several people pop into my head, but Jordan was first. And so I was like, I'm going to follow my gut instinct. I think Jordan really is very, very good at bringing himself to things and to situations and parties and events, but making tons of space for others. It can be really difficult to find someone who can do both of those things at the same time.
I so appreciate it. You're a great friend too. This is why we're here. It's the best. We just love each other too much.
It's true. It's true.
Can I ask a question? How uncomfortable are you both at being designated as really good friends in general to people?
I feel great about it. Oh my gosh.
Friendship
Everybody
experts.
should get compliments like that all the time. Just
Okay.
receive it. It's the best. No, yeah, I do love my friendships. Like Mal was saying, it's one of the things that you just have to really keep first and foremost in your life, especially for me I'm the youngest sibling with a big age gap. So all of my siblings, while great people and lovely friends, we're just not on the same like wavelength age-wise. So friends are family to me in a lot of ways.
Jordan,
Yeah,
I
and
love you
I
thinking
view it
about
like I'm getting an award or something. Like I've won an Oscar. Like, oh my gosh, thank you so much to the Academy. Like, thank you, Mom and Dad. You raised a great friend. Like, congratulations. And yeah, it's something that I try to focus on. It's probably like my primary focus in life is like being a good friend to people. And so it is a huge honor, and I'm just so grateful to be here. So
Yeah.
I love both of these comments so much. Adam, I feel like I have been thinking this lately that we do not give awards for things that are good for people. We don't. We give awards for like people's obsessive ambition and for things that like are usually often they are toxically driven. Like the reason they're so good is because they hate themselves on some level. It's like you get an award
Ooh.
for completely sacrificing important relationships in
Yeah.
your life, for absolutely hating yourself to this point in time. And I do think we should give awards for friendship. I wish that there was a way that I wish that was sexier to people, but it really isn't.
Well, and I just am excited to be here for the learning part too, because it was really kind of fun to read some of the material and things that we were going to discuss here, and also having Adam here and Diana and you, people that I'm happy to keep learning about, because being an intentional friend is a practice for sure.
Yes.
So there's a lot to learn.
Definitely. Well, now that we've gushed about you both a little bit, do you want to just formally introduce yourself to our audience? Anything you want to say about yourself, really. And then I guess what I wrote is, what are you known for, and why do you think Mallory and I invited you to participate here?
Sure, I can start. Yeah, so my name is Staveski. I'm a 30-year-old man living in Washington, D.C. And I think I was nominated to be on this podcast because I have a penchant for lists and spreadsheets of all sorts. But in particular, I've been engaged in a multi-year effort to track all of my social interactions with my friends. And that includes both like the number of times I interact with them, as well as the approximate number of hours that I spend with them. And the idea here is, right, like it's so easy, especially in a transient city like Washington, D.C., to have friends come and go in and out of your life. And I wanted to be like a little bit more intentional about making the effort on a quarterly basis to interact with everyone who I consider to be a close friend. And so this was my way of being like, okay, I should at least be able to talk to my friends, whether in person or on the phone, like once per quarter. That is the bare minimum I think that I can do as a friend to be up to date on people's lives, on their plot lines. And so I started tracking this as a way of reminding myself to be focused on that.
I have 1,000 questions for you, but let's hear from Jordan first, and then we will circle back.
Yeah, I'm going to need a copy of that spreadsheet for my own purposes, actually, Adam. Thank you. But no, I'm Jordan Hunter. I live here in Los Angeles, so we're truly coast to coast over here in this podcast. And I'm 35. I am happily partnered with my partner Spencer of 6 years. And as far as being an intentional friend, I've just always needed people a lot in my life. And so I just genuinely enjoy the time, surprise, surprise. So my current job for the last, almost 7 years now, I work an odd shift. I work from like 1 p.m. to like 11 p.m. And so my Monday through Friday, I don't have a ton of natural time to just be around friends. So to your point, Mal, earlier, like I am not in a natural college like phase where I can just easily pop over to a friend. I have to make the time. I have to make the phone calls, make the plans, and make a calendar. And I probably should have a spreadsheet, but it's just something that has stayed relevant and a requirement for mental health. And so that's why I'm here.
I
I love it.
Yeah, totally. I think that one of the things I'm picking up from both of you, and then Adam, what I know of you is that you not only show up well, as a friend, but you've created like a culture of friendship among your other friends where they start to think about this category of friend in a different way. And it comes alive a little bit more. Like Adam, I know that one of the things that you playfully do at the end of the year, because spreadsheets can be kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm being tracked or whatever, but it's quite clear that it came out of your desire to track yourself and like whether you're showing up for people. And just as you're saying, it's so transient, it's easy to lose track of people who matter to you and be like, oh my gosh, a year's gone by or whatever. Anyway, I think it's a very endearing bit, but I know that's like been infectious among your friends where they're like, wait, I really want to do well in Adam's check-in at the end of the year, and like, or something like that. But I think that relates to like the book that we read, The Other Significant Others by Rada Cohen. Her main point is sort of like, hey, friends matter a lot, and sometimes we just think of these as total side plots to the actual plot of your life. And particularly in a context where marriage is exalted as the one relationship that your life is headed towards, and then children after that or whatever, it can be so easy for friends to just, yeah, they're somewhere in there and they come and go. But I think the point of her book is to say, like, what if these really are sort of the focal point, and you really do milk these for all they're worth in terms of like really leaning into this as a source of like love and care. So anyway, I just think that creating a culture and a language around friendship is really unique and something that maybe we need more of.
Yeah, I feel like that, not to bring up COVID a second time in one 20-minute period. I don't know how
It
that
was a big
happened.
deal. It's okay.
It was a big deal. But it's interesting because I know that for a lot of the context of this show and kind of talking about the book, where being a single person, I didn't have a partner until I was 30, and spending a lot of time where friendships were the natural focal point, I kind of think I always assumed that being partnered would then, because it so often takes center stage, the natural position of friendships would be one on the side. And what I discovered is there is literally no change from being partnered and being single with regard to the rest of your life. It definitely is one of the most central points of your life, but that does not change the needs that you have. And when COVID happened, and it was all the time, only with my partner for every day for so long, it was just such a stark contrast of being like, oh my gosh, I need people around me. And there's a quote that friendships are relationships for relationships sake, was the quote. And that
Mhm.
was like, of everything I read, that was the thing that stuck out to me as like the truest of the true. um there is such a magical quality to what friendships are, and in some ways so much more vulnerable than any other type of
Mm.
relationship, because there is nothing to extract other than time with people, and that is very sweet and like vulnerable.
It honestly, I keep thinking about this. Diana and I had a chat with a Catholic priest several months ago, and so we got talking about celibacy. And Diana, you sent me something. I can't remember what it was, but it was an article, and in it talked about how one of the special things about celibate people is that they're not trying to get anything from you. Like they're not eventually hoping that the relationship will heat up and turn into something romantic or sexual because they are celibate. Like that's not their goal at all. And there's something about friendships that's like that. It's like the goal is not sex. So it feels
Mhm.
like there's something it's offering it's offering this pure thing that like the relationship for relationship's sake. And I do think that makes it really like it's so interesting how the author points out like that we don't have couples counseling for friendships, and we don't have breakup songs that we can listen to that really resonate about friendships. And it feels like it's in part because it is actually this really pure thing that we haven't figured out is more central than we realize, or just the cultural conversation has been so focused on romantic partnership that it's been very easy for us to sort of miss this very beautiful thing that isn't necessarily as much on the sidelines as we thought.
Mm.
Well, let me ask you all this, because I think that the book makes a compelling case that friendship should be like a central pillar of our lives. Both because it's good for your mental well-being, your physical well-being. It's just enriching to your life. It's all very well and good. I mean, does anyone think otherwise? Like, do we think that anyone thinks, well, friendships are not that important, or is that something that actually everyone kind of believes?
I
I
Yeah.
am glad you asked that because I think that while I really enjoyed the book in terms of like, um, hey, friends matter so much, and we really miss the way that these like support people throughout the life course. And she gave so many examples of people who like are not only there for you when you're down or whatever, but like are helping each other through like end of life care, or who like will move to the same city together to make sure that they're still in each other's lives. So many like very moving examples. At the same time, I think that there's this trick to uh keeping learning to value your friends without putting the purpose of your life on them. And I felt like she kind of blurred that boundary at times.
I have thoughts. I feel like
Yeah.
first off, it feels to me like with deconstructing many things, I always feel like the danger is to like say one is better than the other, or that actually we should have been doing this the whole time. So it's like romantic relationships. There was something that I wrote down at one point because it felt like what was coming up a lot was basically that we are expecting too much of our romantic relationships and not enough of our friendships. But I think maybe the idea that like if you put like you're my everything into any relationship, you might be in trouble. Like
Yeah.
that
Totally
maybe
agree.
it's more about balance regardless of how you're oriented. And this is a question that we can circle back to with Adam specifically because I'm so fascinated by your spreadsheet and what you because I have a lot of questions about friendship. I genuinely do. It's like I'm so curious about the number of friends that you feel like you can maintain on a spreadsheet, and that's probably different for all four of us, I would assume.
Totally. Yeah. And that is a great question because I have a pretty superb social battery and I can personally
Mhm.
do a lot and maintain a lot of friendships. I think on the spreadsheet right now I have 92 different people that I'm tracking.
You keep
Um,
you keep
Heck
track of
yeah,
them
heck
quarterly.
yeah.
All of them get a quarterly Adam moment of some
I,
kind. A
I
text,
can't
What does that
I
look like?
can't promise everyone that they're all getting their quarterly moment, but I think the idea is that there's 92 people in my life who are people who I would want to engage with at least once per quarter if I were being the best version of my friend self. And so I don't always succeed every quarter. In fact, I normally fail every quarter. But I think that there's some element of just like, being aware of when I fail. It makes me more aware and more ready the next quarter to dive in and do better. But I think that like that is why I break it up into quarters as well. Because I think that no matter how introverted or extroverted you are, I think once per quarter is very, very doable, right? You should never be struggling to interact with somebody once per quarter. And if you are struggling to get to that threshold, then that's probably the proof that you're not that close to friends, or this relationship is not that important to you.
Interesting.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, all I was gonna say is it reminds me of I had a conversation with myself about social media several years ago because I find social media quite toxic most of the time. And so I like have the 15-minute timer on it. Sometimes I just try to post and desert. But I also found myself having a really hard time being like, but this is where people post about their babies and their engagements, and how am I gonna know? And at some point, just to speak of that sort of, I don't know, the edge of the 92 or whatever that you were just discussing. Like if I'm not talking to them in person about their baby or their engagement at some point in the year, then we probably aren't close enough friends that I need to like do something I don't feel good about doing, which is be on social media every day for way longer than I want to be, so that I can know they had a baby when I actually am not even connecting with them about it. So I find that edge really, to me, that's like the like dark and scary question of the conversation of friendship. It's like, when is a friendship just done, and why, and how does that, it stresses me out a little bit to think like maybe it's the Christian background, but it's like you can never have too many friends. But it's like I only have 24 hours in a day and I do need to
I
sleep
know.
for a good chunk of those.
Yeah, well, actually, I was gonna jump on what you were saying because this has been on my mind a lot, especially as I
Mhm.
said before, because of my kind of odd hours and schedule. I like the word intentional because I've had to become even more intentional. And something, Mal, you and I have discussed as both of us being rather extroverted sorts of people is
Mhm.
it can be kind of easy for other people to, for lack of a better word, glom onto us. And while I so love and appreciate and am flattered by that, it's just not practical to spend that much time with every single person that I have a positive interaction with. And so I've learned for myself at least to sort of not stress so much about that. About um, trying to maintain every relationship. Everybody handles it differently, and I think whatever works for you is what works. But you and I have a mutual friend that we've talked about. I won't name names because I don't mean to make anybody feel bad in any way. Someone I love dearly, someone I truly love dearly. But it was one of those things where we had become good friends. We had grown apart just a little bit, and there is nothing wrong with how they were behaving, how they were interacting, nothing. It's just that we were changing. And there was this
Mhm.
moment where we both had like a very lovely conversation over brunch where we were like, I haven't seen you in a while. This has been really nice. I I don't know. I can't remember how it went, but we were so open that it was this fascinating moment where basically we were like, "It's been great. I don't know that we need to
Aw.
make that much more of an effort together. Don't change, but we're both just on different paths, and I don't really have the time to keep us
Yeah.
close like we always have been." And there was something very mutual about it that made it easier, so it wasn't just, a one-sided thing. But I do think that friendships are allowed to be like a bouquet of flowers. It's like you have them and they're beautiful and they're there for a time. And it's okay that people change and there's nothing wrong with either person. And it's like, it's not really, there's a fine line between being intentional so that you're maintaining the relationships that you want while also uh, it's sort of very Buddhist, flowing like
Mhm.
water. You can't hold on to
Mhm.
anything, attachments. It's like uh, loving the people that are around you, no matter who those people are, and making time for them means that you do have to. spend less time with some other people, and that is okay. And in a way, I thought about it this way as well. In a way, you are if you are doing, what's the phrase? It's like, obligation friendship, where you feel a certain obligation. You really are doing that person a favor, because you are filling up time in their schedule that they could be using to find someone who can actually give them more and more willingly. And that's important too. Like that is something where if you are filling a void for them that is not fulfilling you, then they would if that friend knew that, they would not appreciate that either. And
Yeah.
so, it's healthy for people to do those check-ins, and be they on a spreadsheet quarterly or mentally, be like, you know what, I actually am not sure this relationship is going to proceed, and that is not because anyone's doing anything wrong. We're just different
Yeah.
people sometimes.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, and I have myself, I struggle to know when a relationship is over, when it's reached its natural conclusion, and how do you go about having that conversation. So I'd be really curious to hear more about how that went. But I also think it's like important to note that not all friendships are created equally, right? Like it is okay to have a closer friends, to have medium friends, and to have lower tier friends. And yeah, it's like funny that you use the analogy of flowers, because I like to think about friendships as like an ecosystem, or like a garden, where you have like, your tall trees, and these are your best friends, and they're, resistant to rain and wind and sleet and hail. And, even if their relationship eventually falls, there's still like a stump left over. And, these are like really important relationships in your life, and they're never going to be totally erased. And then you have like your, like bush tier, which is like solid friendships that maybe are not rising to the same height as the tree relationships, but they're pretty stable and like worth investing in. And then you go down to like flower tier. And these are like fun, colorful relationships that enliven your life, but that aren't maybe super resilient. People who you like might see at parties, you have fun with, but who maybe come and go with the changing seasons. And then finally, you have like grass tier relationships, which is like people who are pleasant, but they're just kind of there,
There. They're just
It's
there.
like no individual blade of grass is like itself significant, but like maybe in aggregate, they make a beautiful lawn that you can recreate and have picnics on or whatever. And so like there's different like levels, and they're all good. None of them are bad, but they kind of just slot into your life in different ways.
I love that analogy so much. That's actually a garden is exactly the energy I was thinking about, but you've thought it through so beautifully.
Really beautiful, Adam. I think that's occurring to me as you talk as well is that I feel like it can feel sometimes I sometimes have like an icky feeling about figuring out where people are in that ecosystem. And first of all, I love that it's not like a tier where it's like you got good and then bad and it's like, no, this is all beautiful. It's all really nice and it makes your life more beautiful. But also, I think it's helpful to not necessarily think about it's not like this person is a tall tree. It's that this relationship is a tall tree. That the thing that exists between us is more what we're really kind of trying to wrap our minds around and our hearts around. Because sometimes I think it can almost feel like, well, this person's really cool, so I want them to be a tall tree, or this person and blah blah. But it's really not that's not what the garden is. The garden is about the types of connections and the types of which and those things are built. And I think that makes it a little clearer for me as well to think like it's not really about judging people or putting them into categories. It's about really taking stock of your relationships and therefore the amount of like I often think, I'm gonna be merging all these helpful analogies now. But I think about like having a battery and how some people you can only be around if you're like over 60% energy, or but your tall trees are people that you can go to when you're like at zero, like
Mhm.
at zero, and you're having like the worst day of your life. You can go to a tall tree, and that tree is going to be resilient about your zero. But understanding that some friendships and maybe grasses and shrubs might take more energy and might require a different kind of a different kind of interaction. So man, this is really helpful. I like love that.
I was thinking too while you were saying that, I think one of the frustrating things about friendship is that you don't always know where you stand. Sometimes it's very
Yeah.
obvious, right? If somebody invites you to go on an international 2-week trip with them, they probably like think highly of you, right? There's probably some, and sometimes it's just really not clear. And like I myself feel humbled to be in this conversation because I really value my friends, but I think I make so many mistakes all the time as a friend. And one of them is that I don't always realize what I mean to people. I think I default towards thinking like people probably aren't thinking of me. And then sometimes I've realized like, oh no, they really did care if I showed up to that. Or like, oh, they really did, like they really were waiting for me to respond more quickly to that. And that's something that I'm wondering if you guys have thoughts on is like, how do you show up in this environment when you don't totally know where you stand with other people? And do you, because one of my big fears too is being imposing as a friend. Like, I don't want to assume in this whole landscape where we all know we have limited time, I don't want to assume that, like, oh, yeah, they definitely want to spend a night of their precious week with me. You know what I mean? Like, how do you know? Yeah, how do you show up and how do you navigate that?
Well, if I may just hop onto that, just because something you said is something I always bring up as an example of being a very open friend, which is I was in college and I had a dear friend who, this is a silly anecdote. He was a dear friend, and all he wanted was to start the Walking Dead series together because we all wanted to watch it. And I was with our other roommate, and he also wanted to watch The Walking Dead. And we were home alone, and the two of us were like, you know what? I'll rewatch it when our other buddy, well, Jake, we'll call him, when he's back. We'll rewatch it. It's fine. But I just want to. I'm so excited. Let's start it. So we start it, and Jake comes home and sees that we started the show without him, even though he specifically had asked that we all watch it together. And in my head, Diana, I was thinking the same thing as you about myself, where I was like, he doesn't care. I mean, like,
Yeah.
obviously, it's a nice thing. He wants to do a nice thing together. I get it. But like, he's a cool, extroverted, fun guy. I don't think I matter that much, really. And when he came home and caught us watching this show, he before he left again, because he was just stopping in before leaving again, he like paused at the door and he like turned around and looked at us and he was like, I am actually really mad about this. And then he was like, and he walked out and left, and I felt horrible. And what was
Mhm.
interesting though is that while I did feel horrible, I was also kind of overwhelmed by feeling very loved in this very
Yeah.
strange, like, not understanding where I stood and realizing like, oh my gosh, I'm important enough to actually hurt him, and I did not realize that, and I
Yeah.
told him so. I was like, "You know what? I actually really appreciated that you said that. I'm really sorry. I won't do that again, but thank you for saying that. Like, thank you for being open enough to say that it hurt, and so I will keep that, in mind." So, I guess within that anecdote, there's, like, a larger lesson that I learned, which is what Mallory was saying about the trees, where I just tried to really learn that it's not a value judgment of the person. In a similar fashion, I have to reflect that back to myself. That really doesn't mean anything about my personhood or my value or my inherent worth or anything about that. It probably means nothing more complicated than they genuinely did not have enough time. They genuinely had someone that they really love also that took that spot, whatever the case may be, but choosing not to take an offense or take it personally when it just doesn't have to be. And to wrap it up, I also, on the same token, have become a huge believer in, you know, in a lot of ways, friendship is like describing how you fall asleep. You know, you're sort of like, I don't know, it just
No,
kind of
no.
happens. Like I do it every day, but it's like I don't really know. And so to that end, it's sort of
Mhm.
like if I am if a relationship is not coming together, there's not enough time for us to come together, or it's not at the level I would like it to be. I don't want to be part of a club that wouldn't have me. It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Mhm.
clearly, if I'm confident in myself enough, then if this time is not working out, then that is self-evident proof that our relationship level is just not going to be the same. Like if we're both making an effort and it's just not the same effort, then that's the answer of what relationship level we should be at. I think sometimes uh, we're not flowing like water. We're fighting too hard sometimes. It's you got to kind of accept it all like sleep,
Mm,
Mm.
as it were.
that's beautiful.
Yeah,
Adam,
I
do you have
totally
any
agree. I
thoughts?
think there's a lot about like matching energy levels. And so when you're telling your story about your friend in The Walking Dead, I'm wondering if him becoming upset with you about not watching the show together, did that like actually perversely like improve your friendship? Because you're like, oh, this person actually cares about me, and I want to
Mm.
like show them that I care back.
Match.
Yeah, match.
Totally. That was 100% exactly what happened. Is we became way better friends immediately afterward, because then I was like, "Oh, I wanted to be better friends." I just kind of was a too shy 22-year-old to assume that, too insecure to believe that people would want to be my friend. And as
Mm.
soon as he
Mhm.
proved that to me with kind of some not harsh words, just honest words, we immediately became best friends. We then stayed roommates for the next like 3 years through college, and happily so. So it was a huge boost to the relationship for sure.
There's
That's super
something
cool.
there's something so helpful about, because well, I'm gonna be honest when I'm hurt, instead of assuming, well, friendships should always be just totally easy and they should never have conflict or else they're bad. It's like, well, that's actually not healthy relationship dynamics. But I think because of our kind of culture's um uh habit of saying, well, this one relationship should be all that you need. It makes us maybe feel a little shy about the sort of thing happening that might often lead to like, well, we're not friends anymore because they freaked out once. And, that could have happened. But instead, what happened is like, oh, this person actually, I matter to this person and I actually want to fight with this person to maintain something that we both care about. And it really is very similar to romantic relationships. And I think I think it's more just about trying to bring in more balance with the way we approach both, that one doesn't need to take the center of your life or require all of your energy, and that your friendships don't require none. That
Mhm.
actually a little conflict resolution in friendships can go a long way to building a tall, tall tree.
Mhm.
Yeah. I would say though, I think it takes a dance to know which is which, and I think this is true with romantic relationships too. Sometimes you need the DTR, the defining the relationship conversation, and then I feel this especially strongly now that we're in, like, a culture where therapy speak is everywhere and, like, everyone's like, "Communicate, communicate." Sometimes you really need to just dial it back, right? And so knowing the dance between, like, "Hey, this person really has no clue that that hurt me, and they need like, I think they would want to know," and taking that leap. But then other times, I think there really is this, like, over communicating or formalizing things, and I don't think this is just true in a friendship, I think in relationships too. You have to know how to pick your battles and also, like, read the room a little bit. Like, I think one thing that is, I've been on both sides of this situation where you thought somebody was a tree and they really never signed up to be a tree, or vice versa. Somebody is making you their tree and you're like, I can't do that." And the book pushed me a little bit because I actually felt like sometimes, um I wish that the book were a little bit less about, uh like, I think that it in some ways, it was committing the same
Mhm.
error that sometimes people do with romantic relationships, where she was trying to make her friendships the center of her world. And
Mhm.
I think the beautiful thing about friendships is, like, you share a world with other people, and you're going through life side by side, and you're companions as you go and do this thing.
Well, to your point, I was having a conversation with a single friend of mine who was stressing out a lot about how long they'd been single. And he was being like, I feel like I've lost the practice. Like, I don't know what to do or to say.
Mm,
What I was telling him, though, and I feel this way about friendship and the book, is I'm like, the skill part of relationship building, in my opinion, is the meeting people and getting to know people in the first few months. Like that piece to me really is a practice and a skill, in my opinion. That is like getting used to how to call somebody, text somebody, go how to start a conversation, how to get that moving. That's practice, learned habits and skills. After that, though, in my view, it's like relationships flow. It should be something like Dan. I love the phrase you said. It's like it's a shared world. It's like there once you've gotten to know somebody through the skill portion of friendship building at the beginning, then in my opinion, like a way more naturalistic and fun back and forth, because assuming you've made it this far, you share a lot of similar sensibilities. So then it's fun to spend the time and the amount of time together. I just feel like it all starts to come a lot more naturally. And what I was telling this friend is that I'm like, romantic relationships and friendship relationships are similar, in my opinion, in this way, where no amount of practice is going to help you with any one individual person that you're having a relationship with, because every relationship is a snowflake in and of itself. And if it's a good long lasting tree kind of friendship, they'll flow right along with you. I feel like that can take care of itself, is I guess what I think I was thinking about.
Yeah.
It does bring me to a question that I have for all three of you, which would be, what just in terms of the skills that are necessary, or in terms of, I just keep thinking about, I've had a couple of conversations lately with some really beautiful people who are in a phase where they feel like they have no friends. Whether it's like they just had a baby, or they moved to a new place, or all their friends just seem to leave at once, from like all the tall trees seem to move somewhere else. And that doesn't mean they can't talk, but maybe it could be like your friend Jordan, where someone just feels like they're out of practice, maybe just getting out of a long relationship or something like that. And I was wondering if you had what would you tell a person who said, like, who's listening to this podcast and it's like, wow, these people sound really social. I don't feel like I have any friends. Like, what would you say?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think it's hard, right? And I'm fortunate that like I have lived in the same place for, 13 years. So I've never had to like, do this thing where I totally start from scratch, which I could imagine being very difficult. And I know that people, when they move to a place like DC and they're new in town, they're like, how do you meet people? And I actually don't feel like I have a very coherent, set of points about how to build new relationships. I think for me, if I was to map out the full web of my friendships, I think they would all link back to like a common set of just like a few core relationships. Like I made like a few friendships, and then my subsequent friendships were stemmed from those initial set, if that makes any sense. So I think for me, a lot of it is about like seizing opportunities. Just like when you meet someone interesting, kind of like what Jordan was saying about the skill of like developing the friendship. It's like you have the opportunity available to you. Like if you find this person interesting, how do you convert them from a stranger to an acquaintance to a friend? Like how do you, make them from a
Yeah.
blade of grass to a tall tree? And that I think is the challenging thing, but it requires mostly just like effort and showing up and being there for people, I guess.
Mm.
Are
Yeah.
are there
Yeah.
any specifics in that, Adam, that you would recommend to get from grass to tree?
Yeah. I don't know that this is generalizable advice, but like the most precious currency is your time. And so I think that it's like the spending of my time with other people is itself like an act of service almost, right? It's like I'm willing to give you my finite time and you're willing to give me your finite time. And that is kind of like a beautiful thing. And so what I try to do in general is just show up for people. I say yes to literally everything, which is why my social calendar is a disaster. It's like I'm just constantly booked. It is impossible to manage, but we try our best. You know what I mean? And I think people really do appreciate it when you show up for them. And I think beyond just showing up and being kind and generous with their time, there's also friendship hygiene that you can do. And so for me, like one thing that I do is wish people happy birthday. This is so easy and so straightforward, but like people on their birthday, they, even if they're not birthday divas, they want to be recognized in some way. Like they feel happy when you send them a birthday text. And also, like, if you go above and beyond, instead of just saying happy birthday, you say like happy birthday. Here's some memories that we've shared together or some inside jokes that we have. If you make it into like a 1-paragraph text, then it goes so far above and beyond what everyone else does that people love that. And they're like, oh my gosh, this person's thinking about me, and not just in a passing way, but in a more deeper way. And I think that is like my key to be like, okay, if I ever want to get in someone's good graces, it's like I'll send them a good happy birthday text. And I think that they generally appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Well, I've thought about this a lot, actually, just about the actual hard skills of going from seed to grass to tree, because I think it's very understandable to be lost. And some of the advice that I have really taken to heart and I think has helped a lot is, uh, first and foremost, go towards your interests in a more intentional way, and you will find people that are automatically one phase similar to you. So for some people, that's church, very obvious. Like church is an activity, and I think within the LDS faith or any organized religion, I've always kind of assumed that was a default, but I didn't realize that what I was actually doing was a very intentional and very normal practice of gathering together with people with a like-minded interest and therefore skipping 15 steps of friendship by jumping there. So another thing I did is I joined a kickball league when I got here and didn't know anybody, didn't have a team to sign up with. They have a free agent like thing. And I just want to assure people that are hearing this that the jitters and nervousness of the first time going to something like that, that does not ever go away. You just kind of have to accept it and lean into it and get through it. Same with meeting people at a party and striking up a conversation. If you're nervous, guess what? That is normal and no one feels less nervous. Like everyone feels that. And so my advice would be follow your passions and interests. Once you're there, embrace the discomfort. That's just part of it. And sorry, but once you get over that hump, it'll be good. When you're having a conversation, I always tell people there's only two places it can go, and both are good. Either you start talking to somebody and they tell you something you know nothing about, and you go, be curious and be like, well, tell me more about that. Teach me what about golf is interesting because I sure as don't know. And then they can tell you what it is, and you can just be like, wow, that's fascinating. I had no idea. Suddenly you have a full blown conversation. Or they tell you something you do know about, and now the conversation is a back and forth of, oh my gosh, I love this movie too. I love their work and when they did this thing. I thought that. And so your conversation tree is only success because it only goes into they're telling me something I don't know and I'm learning, or they're telling me something I do know and we're sharing. And in both situations, you end up with a friend. And then from that point, I feel like maintaining the relationship, the hardest part, long-term or short-term friendships, that barrier to entry can feel so high. So for me, I always want to try and do whatever I can to lower and lower and lower that barrier to entry by taking pressure off. So what I'll do is I embrace the social media DM. So it's like if we're all so petrified of the way social media sucks that connection out of us, which it does, it can. I'm trying to use it as it probably was supposed to be used. And I'm like, if I'm seeing a friend's story and I think it's even a little interesting, boom, I'm replying. I'm using that as some of my time to connect with people quickly, easily, with no pressure. They've already put it out there. It's not like I'm cold texting them, "Hey, how are you?" Which is fine to do too, by the way. Uh, but then I also will utilize things in my day that remind me of people to reach out and start another conversation or a phone call or FaceTime. Like a common one I do is I do the morning crossword. And there was like inevitably several clues that I think another friend would know. And I will phone a friend and I'll be like, screenshot my crossword puzzle, text my friend and be like, hey, how you doing? Do you know the answer to this crossword clue? Because I think you know something about South Africa. So tell me. And then suddenly we're talking that day and we've reconnected. Same goes with on my phone. I have my lock screen set to cycle through my photo album, so it changes every couple hours. And what that does is suddenly I will get my face, my screen. Okay, right now it's this hilarious memory at a wedding. This is from like 5 years ago, and his birthday was yesterday, actually. So now I'm reminded. I'm like, I need to text him right now, and I'll often do a screenshot of my lock screen and be like, "Hey, look what I'm looking at today. How you doing? What's going on?" So it's like all of these small, simple little ways to keep those plates spinning, keep watering that garden, and they're just some hard skills that whatever works for you, you can do. But these are the things that have worked for me in cultivating and growing relationships.
That's really interesting.
A master
I
class.
I have a couple more specific questions, but they're kind of broad. One is, do you ever find that there's people for whom the tricks don't work, but you still want to be their friend?
Mhm.
And I mean, one way we put this on the discussion guide is like there are some people who are easy to be friends with, right? And like they're gonna respond. They're in their DMs too. They also have time to show up at everything and it just like works and it flows. And then there's people that you might find would be they might actually be harder to connect with or something, but there's something about them that you're like, that would be a meaningful friend to have, even if it's not as simple. But do you ever find yourself pursuing friendships with people where it's not actually that they're just responding and they're easy to build friendships with? And then along with that, my question is like, why friends? What do you actually want out of your friends? What is the whole point for you?
Yeah, I guess it's a good question. So I will echo a quote that's I think already been said in this podcast, which is the very definition of a friendship is a relationship where there's nothing in it for you other than the relationship itself. And so for me, like if the relationship is not coming naturally, and if I have to force it, I think it's probably one that is not worth investing in. That would be my
Mhm.
take. I personally don't have very many examples of times where I was like, I'm going to be your friend and we're going to force it and we're going to make it happen and it's going to work out positively for both of us in the long run. So I tend to think about it, yeah, as like, there's got to be a give and take. There's got to be an even exchange. And like, you both need to be on the same page, same phase of life, etc. Now, I do think that there is something to be said about like, I don't know if this is a trope like in life or if this is just something that I think about all the time. But like, I think about like my college orientation like all the time where you're all like 18, you're really scared, you're in a new place, and like you're in this room together with all these strangers. And then there's like that one guy who is like super chatty, super like vivacious, super extroverted, and he kind of like lightens up the mood. And you're like, oh, wow, I'm so grateful that this person is here. They're really easy to be friends with because they're just chatting when when everyone else feels too awkward. But then I feel like the more you get to know that person, the more you're like, I actually don't like them at all. Like they're actually pretty annoying. And the same, like they're like the center of attention. They like having the spotlight on them. They tend to be kind of self-centered. And so I think that there's something to be said about like, just because a person is easy to get along with does not necessarily mean that they'll bring you like deep satisfaction in the long run. And probably like the quiet kid who's sitting in the corner is going to be more interesting to talk to than the person who's like makes the biggest first impression.
And it might be more
Yeah.
difficult to spark up the friendship because they're the quiet kid in the corner. I think that's a really good point.
Well, and just to echo that really quick, I think that's my experience too, but I don't always like thinking about the friends you really want and need for that sounds so mean. I think there's something to that distinction of really thinking of what friendships are for and although yes, you want this flow and there needs to be reciprocity, and yet if you're always going to just like the lowest common denominator in terms of like, yeah, this is just super easy and available, that's not actually what it looks like to be an intentional friend either. Maybe the way to say that.
Totally. I also feel like for those types of folks that maybe take a little bit more to crack open the shell, first of all, sometimes a super fun challenge that I like for that alone. But also, I think it is matching energy, which does not mean abandoning them, but I think sometimes it's like, this is a weird analogy, and I'm not comparing people to animals, but like when you have a super timid dog, which I have a friend who their dog is like genuinely terrified of people. And you know how in order to coax them over, sometimes you can hold out a treat, but you can't really look. And if you kind of look away, hold out the treat, they'll slowly get closer and then take the bite. I feel like for sometimes those friends, it's like I I think less is more, and sort of approaching with some of the same temerity can be a matching of energy, and you can sort of be like, "Hey," just saying, "Hey, what's going on? Anything new going on?" And you can just kind of take it one step at a time, but I feel like reaching out and becoming friends with those people can be really worth the time because, like Adam was saying, it's like there can be a lot more under the surface if we just make that effort. And so I think if you're the friend who sees the quieter person, um, get curious. I just think curiosity is a lot of the pumping blood of all relationships, particularly friendships, is curiosity and just like tell me about who you are, and that is kind of the lifeblood of it.
I think that just unlocks something for me, Jordan. I do think there's something about the curiosity that I think sometimes might lead you to, if you're still leaning in any type of relationship, if then there is something there for you. And hopefully a self-aware, intentional person can say, well, I know this person doesn't seem all that warm to me, but I actually still really want to know them. And so I'd like to pursue this curiosity. And that becomes a conversation about you and your life and how you'd like to live your life. And it's not as much waiting for that person to deem you as worthy or not, but it's more about, why do I feel curious about this person? And it can be kind of an interesting mystery, or like Jordan was saying, a challenge, like I'm going to get that person in the end, but there are plenty of people. Like I just saw somebody yesterday at church that every time I talk to her, she looks away right away. Like she does not want to talk to me. She does not want to talk to me. I'll ask her how she is and she'll like smile and nod. Like she won't respond. And I won't lie, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. And it's not because I'm a glutton for punishment or because I don't think I deserve to be treated better. It's because I'm still curious about her and I would still like to know more about her.
I think one of the things going through my mind as we're having this conversation is realizing that because of church, I've had such strong formation in a context where forced friendships are kind of the norm, and where the question of why you're friends with them is like, well, because they're children of God. And
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
everyone.
and like
So you
you're
don't have
their
time for
ministering
everyone.
sister. And it really is this mentality of like everyone is worth your time and everybody, and like
Yeah.
you might end up making these friendship gestures without feeling like it all the time. And they might not always respond in a way that you find satisfactory or whatever. And I actually think that's really beautiful. I think it's very good training ground. If anything, it's just good training ground to know how to be a friend so that when you do find those friendships that actually are like deeply rejuvenating, um, and that you like have the muscles for it and the skills for it. And then also just the beauty of discovering that sometimes there are people, like I have absolutely been assigned to be like a ministering sister to people that I thought I had nothing in common with. I would have sought them out. And then I think they're the coolest person by the end. And I really do like that, because that's one of the downfalls of like being intentional about things, is it means you only are intentional and put effort towards things that it occurs to you are worth your time. And there's so many people who are just like understated characters, or that you would never guess that you have a particular type of sense of humor that jives together or similar sensibilities, and we just don't always see who's around us. So anyway, that's one of the things in the back of my head, is like definitely have had strong experiences with like forced friendship and that whole world of what that brings, which is, on a different pole in some ways than intentional friendship where you're in the driver's seat all the time.
I think that dovetails nicely into the why friendship question, because
Yeah.
Jordan and I were just talking about this 2 weeks ago, that you come from a church background where we're like there is a little bit of a friendship martyr complex that I feel like you can come out with, where it's just like, I'm a friend to all and I have endless resources. I'm so curious, what kind of walls should be put around friendship? How should we talk about this, and what should we be looking for? I'm not sure what the best question is, but it's sort of like, why
Why
friendship? What
friends?
friendship?
What's it for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adam has a real
I
thinking
would
face on.
That's
Ooh,
it's such a
yes,
hard question.
let's hear it.
No, I don't know that I have like a profound insight here. And like I guess right, there's this question of like sometimes you have a relationship where the person is going through like a really hard time and they're just genuinely like not fun to be around at all.
Right.
And of course, if this is like a meaningful relationship to you, then you're like, oh my gosh, of course I want to be there for you in your times of trouble. But when you have 92 friends, it's like you can't be there for everyone's crisis all the time, right? And that's not even counting all the other people who I don't know who aren't even listed on the spreadsheet at all. So I tend to think about it more like, unfortunately, in a selfish way, where it's like if this lower tier grass relationship is like not serving me, or it's not bringing me joy, or I feel drained after interacting with this person, I would tend to let it go. And I would only do this sort of martyr thing if this was a relationship that was like a tree relationship, someone that I really care about. And it's worth it to me for me to be like sort of unhappy, or I don't know, unhappy is not the right word, but you know what I mean? It's worth it for me to take on some of their pain because I care about this person so much, but that cannot be the case for everybody, I think.
I feel like I want to challenge, like, is it selfish to run your life? You know what I mean? I feel the same instinct, but also it is my job to run my life. It is not my job to be
Yeah.
present for everyone. It's not like you're saying you don't want to be helpful to anyone, but I'm just putting that in the air. I don't even know what else to
I
say about
mean,
it.
I can respond with a couple of examples of times when I have not wanted to run my life, or in particular, I've had a little bit of a sense of like, "Oh, I'm the only person who's friends with them during this really tough time, and so I
Right.
really need to show up." And I completely neglect my own social battery or my own emotional battery, and sometimes there's 2 situations I'm thinking of. I haven't had very many friend breakups in my life, but, like, these were 2 situations that eventually went that way, where what happened is they were actually really disrespecting me and, like, repeatedly over a long
Mm.
period of time, and I just didn't pick up on it because I was in the mode of, like, "Well, I'm their listener friend, or I'm the one that does this," but, like, it was this kind of situation that was so one-sided, and they would ask a lot, and I would give a lot, and just didn't really think about it, and then eventually, I snapped because I was not watching how I was actually reacting to things, and then once that happened, then it all came out. I was like, "Well, actually, yeah, this whole time I felt like it wasn't really appropriate for you to ask so much," and but that was like that wasn't really responsible of me to not be cognizant the whole time of, like, how these things add up,
Mm.
and anyway, that's just a plug for what you're saying, that we all have limitations. I've learned over and over again that I end up snapping at some point, and then everybody's like, "Why didn't you communicate this sooner?" So
Mm.
Yeah. Well, and I think, Dan, I appreciated 2 things that you said. One, I do think that finding time for people you wouldn't normally have spent the time with, that's an important thing that I am struggling with keeping in my life right now, of
Mm.
making time for folks that aren't naturally in my orbit, but whom I may actually find a connection with a little effort. So I think that's such a good thing to keep in your mind. And I have a friend right now who is one of those in between, on the cusp of a, grass in a bush, maybe a tree someday, but we're it's like early days, and they happen to be going through a pretty, just time-wise, they happen to be going through a very, very tough thing right now. So I have been confused as a friend about what level of investment is appropriate, because on the one hand, I don't know this person quite well enough for me to feel comfortable to give more, because I don't know if I have it in me to be with you in this moment, in this mental health journey. But what I'm trying to learn is that, without sounding pompous, the service we want to give people, the quote unquote service of friendship, of relationship with us, is bringing us to them. And if we aren't being honest with those things, then we're actually denying that person the service of ourselves. And that is not service. Either communicate that or establish a certain boundary for yourself, just so that you're not assuming you're being wrong, but actually being like, I want to bring you me. And this is what I need
Yeah,
to be me.
I love
You
that.
know?
I think that's
That's
really
a very
helpful,
good
and
lesson.
it goes back to your comment earlier, Jordan, about friends out of obligation, and the fact that it's almost like we want our energy to burn cleaner than that if possible, and that honesty might be sort of the secret sauce. Honesty, and I feel like you can't really have a relationship with, you can't completely, I guess, embrace life without acknowledging the truth of you. It gets that deep for me, like this conversation about people and choosing what you do and wanting to make choices that come from deep, like from a real place for you, because I think people can feel it when it's like, I actually feel bone dry after I hang out with this person, but feel deeply called to be there for them. And so it feels holy to me and meaningful to me to come home bone dry. And I go to bed and I sleep like a rock and I wake up the next day. And it wasn't because I could only tell myself I was a good person if I was there for them. It's like it's actually so much more selfish. But if we can actually approach things from a place of deeper calling, I mean, I have not nailed this. I probably never will, but that's the best I can come to trying to describe like how deep I actually feel like these questions go.
Yeah. I think there's space too to just be creative. Like, I don't want to lose that part of me that I was taught in church where you really learn to see every person you meet as a brother and sister. And I think that there's so much that's scary about a framework for friends, a friendship being our primary like mode of care in life. Like, should we all have to be at our best behavior all the time? Like, who can stay with us through different difficult seasons? And like, there's just so much need in the world. And I do think that learning to stretch ourselves and or to see people as relevant to us that it wouldn't immediately occur to do that. But anyway, one thing that I've learned is I've tried to think about friends that I'm like, I really do care about this person. I also don't really have the energy to like talk with them all the time. Is like create an environment, right? Like invite them to group things or
Mhm.
like think of very specific activities. You can go to a movie where you're not going to be talking as much, but you can still spend time together. Like I think there's creative ways where you can design an experience that still allows this person to feel cared for and that can be genuine, right? Like sometimes distancing like that is not always like I don't like you. It's just like I really am trying to moderate like how I can be around you in a way that's good for everyone. Anyway, I think sometimes being creative about the kinds of things that you invite people to and designing environments in certain ways. Yeah.
That's so helpful. Like I had a friend just a couple weeks ago who she's actually I think it was Lindsay. I think Lindsay was talking about the fact that she reached out to someone who was sort of a big deal in LA, and that person wasn't able to um I think it was about a business request, and that person was like, I'm not able to do that right now, but I'd love to go on a hike sometime. It was like just a way to like acknowledge like I love hiking and I'd love to get to know you better. Can't work with you on this thing, but maybe we could still. And so it's like, or like I'm going hiking anyway, I'm going running anyway, I'm going to this movie anyway, and being able to bring people into things where it's like it won't require as much energy. I'm gonna use that one, creating an environment. That's very helpful.
I love that.
You all are
I
Mm.
so kind. That is yeah, I think that's really an amazing and inspiring mindset to have, and I think you've inspired me to like try to take it on for myself. But to return to like a question that was briefly discussed earlier in the pod, like I did want to talk about like the friendship breakup. Like Jordan, I think
Mhm.
you
Mm.
had a good story. Diana, it sounds like you have a story to share because it's like even though we're saying, oh, it's good to be high-minded and to like interact with people who, maybe do not always make us feel good or leave us feeling drained. Sometimes you do have to go through a friend breakup, and how do you do that? And look, what are your experiences with it? I myself have very little to share, but I would love to hear from you all.
I guess just distinctions to start. it feels like when do you decide whether you need a breakup or to just let it fade? Because probably most situations it just fades out, right?
Yeah.
Most of the
That's
time, I would say
Exactly.
so. And the only time I had to have an actual DTR like thing, there's only been two, and they're vastly different versions.
Mm.
One of them was because this person just genuinely was extremely unaware of the disparity between what we could give, what I was interested in, frankly, as
Mhm.
a relationship. And it was an uncomfortable phone call. It was one of those where
Mhm.
I just had to tell her, I'm like, hey, I have a lot of other obligations that just mean a lot to me. I do not have the time that you need and are asking for to spend. And it was easier to have because it was like sort of predicated on a little bit of a fight where it was
Mm.
them feeling like very ignored and shut out. And I was sort of like, you know what? Though that's because you are being
Mm.
ignored and shut out.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to say
Wow.
that, but I just
Yeah.
have to
You
be
have to be
honest. Like
honest. Mhm.
I don't appreciate, basically I was sort of like, I don't appreciate your expectations. Like they feel a
Mhm.
little unfair, and I just need you to know that. And I was so grateful that we were able to kind of have that fight in that scenario, to just kind of get right to the point. On a totally different branch, it was this person that I have truly so much love and respect for. And the only reason we didn't really let it fade was because we actually did have a lot of natural interactions in group settings. So we were seeing each other from time to time, but it was just one of those things where we'd gotten into a habit of obligated hangs, and they just were starting to get further and further apart and a little bit more and more awkward. And you could just sort of sense that there was a lack of interest on both of our sides. And so we sort of naturally at brunch, and after this kind of long awkward silence, we had the personalities, both of us, where we were able to joke and sort of be like, you know, I don't know that we have a lot in common anymore. And we both just laughed about it. And we both just laughed, and it's like, and then the ice was broken, and then we kind of connected about not being able to connect. And we were like, yeah,
The
I love this journey that you're on. You know, this she was doing this new thing with this new person. And I was like, don't change anything about it. I'm so happy whenever we get to see each other. Um, but yeah, I think it's, and she literally was like, yeah, sometimes people just grow apart and that's okay. And I was like, it is
Oh,
okay. And we
yeah.
were like, great. Well, I'm glad we did this. And look forward to seeing you again. But yeah, we can just let this go.
It's
And
honestly
that was,
Right.
such a dreamy anecdote, Jordan. Like, I'm gonna think about that forever. It feels like a friend breakup out of a Nora Ephron movie, like the way Greg Kinnear and Meg Ryan break up in You've Got Mail, where they're both like, "Okay, goodbye." It's like
yeah, yeah.
totally fine, but also just, props to both of you for your maturity and your ability to be able to sorta call it out when it needed to be called out.
My instincts around friend breakups is that sometimes there's a fight that precedes it, and then you need a conversation.
Mhm.
And I've been in that situation as well, and I'm actually so thankful. There are a couple friendships that I've had where we've had fallings out, and we've worked through it, and it takes time. Sometimes we've, like, distanced ourselves for a little bit, and I think that happens when that's when you know you have a tree, is, like,
Totally.
somebody that you can come back from, and that's very real. Some people, it's like you have the little conflict, and then it reveals that you never really had the roots, and that you were sort of acting as trees to each other without that really being there. But I think too, my instinct with friendship is to just be so generous with people to do what they need. And so I try hard not to take it personally if, like, this is a season where they're not calling as much. I think one thing that we've all probably been through is when somebody gets a boyfriend or girlfriend and then all of a sudden they're not as available. It's so easy to be, like, a little self-pitying about that and, like, but I think be happy for them, like, and they're gonna need you later, you know? It's nothing, no honeymoon phase lasts forever, and but, like, I have a lot of friends that honestly, I don't check in quarterly. We check in, like, sometimes once every 2 years, but then we get together for an afternoon, and it's like no time has passed. You know what? That's okay too. I think that I'm a kind of friend that goes sometimes uncomfortably deep. Like I just that's kind of but like that means that like when they're having a really hard time, I do have friends that call me and they're like, "Diana's the only one who can understand my existential despair right now." Or and I'm like, "I'm there for you. Like I can go there on a dime, like 10 seconds notice and I'm in the depths of despair with you." And that's, and I'm not as good at like I think some people sometimes find my presence heavy as well because I'm sometimes like that. And I just know that's a little bit what I am and what I offer to the world, and that means, like, I might have very different rhythms in terms of what my friendships are, and I think that people who really know me, they know I can be there with them, like, in the dark, but that means they might only need me not that often, and you know what? I'm okay with that. I feel like that's where I feel fulfilled too. That's where I feel like I can be honest about how I see the world and what's on my mind and stuff, so I don't know if that makes sense, but I just find to just not take things personally when people move in and out of seasons with you, and to, like one thing that I've really learned on this note is, like, you really wanna be careful if you're gonna have a formal conversation because you don't wanna close the door prematurely. Sometimes people just need
Yeah.
also, sometimes there's just, like, little things that flare up, and it's actually small and petty, and it's gonna blow over in a couple of months. But if you, like, have a whole DTR about it, it can inflame it and make it seem like a bigger deal than it is. So, I don't know, those are kind of my instincts is to just, like, let there be ease in and out of things, and if you need a conversation, go for it. Otherwise, just try to, like, be there for people when they need you, and I think it's beautiful when you haven't spoken to somebody in a long time and they feel like they can call you with something. I love that, and I just wanna be here to receive them, you know? So
I Diana, I think that's so lovely. And I remember going through that phase at BYU where everybody was getting married and all my friends were disappearing and they all came back.
it's so
They
hard.
they all needed it was so hard
Yeah,
because I didn't realize that it would end. I was really like, "Oh, I guess all your friends just disappear and they go into relationships and I don't even have these girlfriends anymore. I didn't realize this was gonna happen. And I'm terrified to get married. I'm not gonna have any friends when I get married." And then I realized like, "Oh, actually that's not the case. They just needed to focus on that relationship for a while and then they need friends more than ever often." Like realizing like,
mhm.
"Oh, this had kind of an outsized space in my brain and now I get to," and it felt like an honor to be able to be there for them when they circled back around.
I'm thinking of an example that is happening to my friend right now, where they're thinking about like they're mad at their other friend, and their plan is to just sort of pull away slowly and kind of like subtly like fade away into the background. And I was like, I don't know if that's a good approach. Like, do you think if it's
Mm,
better to do that and have it not be weird? Or do you think it's better to just have the conversation, even though the conversation is going to be hard and awkward? Like, do you owe it to your friend to have a friend breakup conversation? I don't know.
You know what? My instinct based on how you're describing that is I feel, and this is my personality, so this is up to everyone's individual experiences. We ask the question, well, why friendships? And I'm like, friendships really are about sharing. To me, it's like sharing earth with somebody at the same time in this cosmically insane spark of life in this empty void. The fact that we're all here together geographically and temporally is a big deal, and it's really cool and so nurturing to share it with people. And so
mhm.
once it gets like it's such a hard thing to describe. Hard in one sense means like experiencing hard things together, and that includes tough conversations, maybe that includes ups and downs and whatever. That's one thing to share, and that's important in a relationship. But effort, like if it's too hard, then it's like, yeah, why friendship? Don't have it then. Like if
Yeah,
if you're not both of you are getting something out of it together, then neither of you are doing each other a service. And so if a natural fading out isn't occurring and there's a perpetual little confrontation going on such that you need to disengage slowly, it's like maybe just have that conversation at that point is how I would feel about it.
so well, thank you both so much.
Thank you. This has been so much
Yeah.
fun.
It was wonderful. I've never done anything like this before, but it's been delightful. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you to our 2 friendship experts. And we're looking forward to sharing this with everybody.
Thank you for listening, everyone. If you would like to continue the conversation with us, we invite you to subscribe to our Substack. You can find us at thesoloist.substack.com. That will allow you to get an email in your inbox every time we release a new episode, and you can click just directly on the links to the readings and the things that we're watching, reading, and thinking about. It also allows for easy two-way conversation with us. Hearing from you all is honestly the best part. No matter how cliche it is, I know every podcast says that, but it's really true. So please subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon.